What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, Let's Talk Media. So does Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania position Marvel to have a successful Phase 5? Let's talk about it. Ultimately, I really liked this film. I thought that this was a good time. There are some drawbacks and flaws that are kind of glaring when you're watching it in the theaters, but I don't think that it's deserving of a lot of the hate that it's getting, and I mean the kind of 40% type of reviews, people walking out of theaters. I don't think it deserves all that. There were definitely some things that didn't quite make sense, some decisions that Marvel made to continue the franchise along that didn't quite make sense, but ultimately I think this was a good introduction to the new big bad Kang. I thought this was a good continuation of the story for Scott Lang and Ant-Man, and a good continuation for what that universe is ultimately going to become. So a little bit about the plot, just to basically Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania starts off with Scott Lang being recognized for all the good that he's done in the world. He was a part of the Avengers, he saved the world, the blip has been acknowledged, taken care of, Thanos has been defeated, so now he's kind of reveling in that glory post Infinity Wars. Now that he's had a chance to kind of relax, his daughter Cassie, played by Catherine Newton, has somehow become a completely adept nuclear, electrical, mechanical, quantum engineer in their basement, and has created the ability to communicate and map out the quantum realm. Well, less than 10 minutes into the movie, they are being sucked into the quantum realm because of that decision making by Cassie, and her decision making we will talk about again in just a little bit. Her overall character I thought was pretty alright, but I think that Catherine Newton was probably working with what she had on this one. But once they get sucked into the quantum realm, basically the entire team, and this includes Hope Van Dyne, played by Evangeline Lilly, Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas, Janet Van Dyne, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, like Catwoman, as well as Catherine Newton's Cassie Lang, all being sucked in and being split apart. This is the first introduction to the quantum realm where we really have a chance to spend some time in it. I know it was touched on in previous movies, but in this case, you actually had a chance to see what this realm looked like, and honestly, I thought it was beautiful. They did a fantastic job of filling the screen with so many little details that were constantly happening. And I say that because that those little details, they made a huge difference to me. Some of the criticisms that I've seen is that there was too much going on the screen. From there, they get sucked into the quantum realm. Almost immediately, we start to get introduced to the story of Kang and how Kang actually relates right back to Janet. And I thought that was really well done. There is a little bit of a MacGuffin situation that starts to happen. Janet starts to help this traveler that she meets. She has no idea who Kang is or what he's about at this point, but she helps this traveler, and he had just helped her get his ship back together. When she's helping him get back together, the MacGuffin of the movie, which is a quantum engine, gets revealed. This quantum engine, upon being fixed between the two expert scientists, that is Kang and Janet Van Dyne, it's revealed that Kang is actually like a monster. Janet touches the MacGuffin, and all of a sudden she's got a vision where she can tell that he is going to be this complete and utter jerk to the entire universe, though it does come into question a little bit later whether he was the jerk or whether the rest of the Kangs are the jerk, because I think this kicks off what becomes Secret Wars a little bit later, and I think Secret Wars probably make a little bit more sense here because of the scale and scope of what the quantum realm is. You can basically assess this at the end of the film when Scott comes back, and it's almost like nothing has happened. In fact, we don't even get any idea about how much actual time has passed back in the normal-sized world during the escapades of Quantumania. Other than that, once we've gotten into the quantum realm, on top of the story starting to be divulged a little bit more about the relationship between Janet and Kang, we also learned that Janet, during her 30-year stint inside of the quantum realm, was a freedom fighter of sorts. And that means that there is actually life that's going on inside the quantum realm, and apparently civilization inside of the quantum realm has also gone down the path of large commerce. And those are where we start to get a little bit off the tracks with some of the things that Disney and Marvel just kind of hope that you'll get on board with without asking too many questions or thinking too hard, because you could sit there and start to ponder, like, how does gravity work? How does air work? how does any of these things work in this realm, and how did people, literally people, like humanoids, like bipeds, turn out the way that they did? From characters like William Jackson Harper, who played Chidi in A Good Place, great actor, his character coming in and having kind of psychic thoughts, to blob characters that were still bipedal. If you drank the ooze, you were able to speak the language, to other characters just kind of being like lights for heads. It was a pretty cool character design. Like, honestly, this was cool. Again, you just have to kind of get on board with what Disney and Marvel are doing here, and that is some pretty wacky stuff. And that's okay. I think that's what they're going for. The Ant-Man movies in general have kind of always had this tone about them. In fact, if we think back to the scenes from Ant-Man and the Wasp, the entire lab gets shrunken down to something that can be tossed between cars and is kicked around multiple times, but by the time it comes back to normal size, nothing inside of it has really been ruined, and we just have to get on board with this. This is a comic book movie. The story that Janet tells about Kang has kind of been dispersed to the group that she's with. We also get a chance to get a little bit deeper into kind of what's going on, and that is there is a bit of a dictatorship that Kang has created at the quantum level, which again is ridiculous in its own right. It's something that we can talk about a little bit later, and maybe in the podcast we'll go into more detail. We went into more detail about this there. So within that dictatorship, basically what's happening now is Kang has created an army, almost as if he was waiting for a scenario or a situation to arise that would allow him to escape. And in this case, this is where he recruits MODOK, and MODOK, played by Scott Cooley, comes in and honestly provides a lot of comedic relief to the movie, although I think each character kind of played the role of comedic relief throughout, and maybe that's another criticism that I'm seeing is a bit warranted. There were characters that were supposed to be serious, but they were basically hilarious. The only character that I'd say was very serious the entire time was Kang, played by Jonathan Majors. Every time Jonathan Majors came onto the screen, he had these very dramatic statements to say, and I thought that he killed it. I thought that he was scary and eerie and obviously powerful, and he did a great job. But let me go back to MODOK. MODOK, again, was hilarious in this movie. I think if you're like a Marvel fanatic, you probably don't love that he wasn't as sinister of a character as he might have been in other depictions, other comic books. But at the end of the day, this guy is a giant floating head with some baby legs. And baby legs, I was so tempted to just be like, get the fuck out of here, in the theater for my Rick and Morty fans out there. So once Kang and his entire team have an idea that Ant-Man, the Wasp, and the rest of the family are in the quantum realm, a search is sent out. Basically, we get into almost like Star Wars type or Star Wars-esque type of plot. Basically, Hope Van Dyne, Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym are off on their own, and they go off on an adventure where we start to see how Janet relates back to the world. The character outfits, the world itself when we're inside of the quantum realm, really reminded me of something out of Star Wars. The civilizations, the oppression kind of situation that was going on there definitely reminded me of the far reaches of some of the spaces inside of Star Wars, and even a little bit of that kind of Rick and Morty vibe as well. They were going into a bar, for example, because in this quantum realm there are bars. People sit down and apparently have tasty beverages. There was a scene that was essentially the cantina scene from Star Wars, and I think that depending on your take on what Disney has done, you either really liked this or you hated it. I liked it. I liked that we got into the scene, we got to see a little bit more of some character design, some creativity coming out of Marvel. Of course, there was CG everywhere, but the vistas that we saw inside of the quantum realm were really beautiful. I really liked them. And we got our boy Bill Murray, who came up and just showed up out of nowhere to me, because I tried to not watch trailers for this, but I saw Bill Murray come in and take off his sunglasses and thought, dope, that's Bill Murray. And he unfortunately like almost immediately betrays Janet, but there is like a little thing going on between he and Janet, because apparently she was there for a while, and I guess they kind of got jiggy with it. And this is about the time that I'm going to use a Getting Jiggy With It music video cut. The creativity is coming through and shining through to me again, because even the escape vehicle that Hank has to drive, he puts his arms into some goo, and then it kind of allows him to ride this ship like a bike, and I thought that was kind of cool. I did like that. I thought that the quipping back and forth was useful. I do think that maybe Janet could have talked about her experiences over the course of those 30 years inside of the quantum realm a little bit, but she did expose a little bit more of what was going on during the conversations when they were inside of the ship. So I thought that was okay. Again, a plot hole there is that, wow, you came back to this world where we were fighting a big bad in Thanos and all sorts of stuff has been going on, and you didn't think to mention that there was another big bad at the quantum level who would actually be destroying the universe and multiverse. That's a thing that happens in movies and film, right? To allow plots to go forward, people have to have misunderstanding. I thought it still did a pretty good job. Now, from there, we start to get into the portion of the movie, the end of the second act and the third act, where we start to see a bit more about Kang. Scott on this side, alongside his daughter, is told that he needs to go. So Kang tells Scott that he needs to go and grab this quantum engine because he's able to shrink down. Kang is not able to do that. So he tasks Scott to do this, or he tasks Ant-Man to do this. Otherwise, he was going to kill Cassie, which I thought that scene was fantastic because it really kind of gave you an idea about the power of Kang, because we got introductions to a lot of people here. We saw a little bit more about MODOK in that scene, but we also saw that Kang almost had created technology that looked like magic, where he was able to, with a flick of his finger, turn people to the side, start to push them up against the wall like unseen forces or gravity or weight being pushed on them, for example. And it felt really powerful. He felt very powerful in those scenes. Scott has to go in and find the MacGuffin of the movie, that quantum engine. Him finding the MacGuffin of the movie is imperative for everything to go forward. So of course he is able to get it, but not before a really cool scene. I thought it was pretty cool with the replications of the Ant-Man as well as the Wasp, who basically only had this scene as being useful in the movie. She just so happened to show up, and it's, again, I kind of feel bad for Hope here. I feel like as a character, her name is in the title, but she was barely in the film. She was barely influencing the plot direction, and I thought that was unfortunate for her character. Also an unfortunate haircut, but again, not going to be too critical about that character design. When we get this MacGuffin back, when we get the quantum engine back, Scott's able to give that back to Kang. Kang kind of leaves them for dead instead of just killing them right then, which is, again, very typical with villains. It also might indicate that this Kang is not as evil as maybe we're anticipating he is, and he was ultimately trying to stop an even greater evil with the versions of himself that he needed to battle against. And I can see that potentially being some reasoning here. And I see that there's a lot of back and forth going on all over the YouTubes and all over the podcasts about why this Kang is motivated the way that he is, and is he just motivated by defeat and embarrassment? And I don't think so, actually. I feel like that would be way too shallow for this character. Now from there, the movie, the third act kind of does, I'd say the third act might actually be the weakest act of the movie, or at least the second half of the third act was probably the weakest act of the movie, because we kind of jump right back into that standard Marvel formula where we're going to have a big battle between faceless enemies, and those faceless enemies are the characters from the quantum realm that Cassie and Scott have befriended. Again, the person that they had to drink the ooze of, William Jackson Harper's character, who has the mental psychic powers, and then that one was very angry but had great abs. I was taken aback. My wife and I were like, check those things out. You want to grate some cheese? Anyway. Last part of the movie basically turns into that situation, right? There are two big armies battling. People are dying. A few things that are happening here that I can understand criticisms for, especially, and those are that during the fight, Cassie, who also just so happened to have a suit, because thank goodness, if she didn't have a suit, she would not have survived this situation or this scenario. There's no way that she would have done that. But she had a suit. She's quipping back and forth with her dad. There's things being blown up around them. People are literally dying, and they're joking with each other in the middle of the battlefield. Again, I think that's just you having to get on board with what Marvel does, Disney does, because during moments of serious, they need to have a moment of levity, or almost like a valley of levity, to get people to maybe not have their heart rate too high or something. I'm not really sure what went into the decision making with that type of pacing, and I do have some issues with the pacing in this movie. I think when I was looking at this rating, I kind of knocked half a point off each time that I saw that pacing issue, because it took me out of the movie, and I thought that was problematic, right? You shouldn't be taking me out of the movie. At any point in the film, I should be able to kind of experience the entire emotion. Anyway, once the battle has ensued and this quipping is happening, this is going back and forth, the kind of typical situation happens. Kang is not fighting in this battle until the end because Scott has gotten huge. Kang is trying to get out of there. Scott's stopping him, and he finally comes down, dons that mask, and starts shooting out Kamehameha waves from his hands, and starts basically showing that, hey, if he's serious, it doesn't really matter how many people are trying to fight him. He's going to win. But of course, it's Marvel. These good guys are not going to lose. Hank Pym's ants, who just so happen to come through during this journey into the quantum realm, they somehow experience thousands of years worth of existence. Now that I'm saying it out loud, it's actually pretty funny, and maybe that's what they were going for. But they've experienced thousands of years of existence and become like a level 2 civilization who are able to come in and overcome all of Kang's army, ultimately pulling Kang back out of the fight and winning the fight for the oppressed people, or for the characters that Cassie and Scott got familiar with at the beginning of the film. Now, what this leads to is a final showdown where Disney had a chance to say, hey, Scott, we're gonna kill this character, we're gonna kill Ant-Man, and they did not do it. They did not do it. There's a moment when Kang kicks the shit out of Scott in the face, breaking his mask, meaning he can't shrink down to subatomic levels, he can't shrink down to miniature levels anymore. Technically, he's already at subatomic levels because they're just hanging out in the quantum realm. But he's handing Ant-Man his ass on a platter. Like, it's about to be over, and Ant-Man was about to do the thing where he sacrifices himself and says, I don't have to win, we both just have to lose. And I thought he was going to die right then because he was bleeding. This is like actually almost like only blood that I feel like I saw during this movie, and it got me enthralled. I thought that this was a situation that, hey, we're going to lose Ant-Man here. This is a decision. But of course, that is not what happened. Hope pops in, saves the day. They're able to basically have Kang get sucked into the quantum engine, and I think he's killed, maybe? It's talked about in the post-credits scene that he's killed here, but we're not sure. I'm not sure. Scott questions himself at the end of the movie when he's walking. I think he has like a Baskin Robbins cake, which, by the way, like Baskin Robbins, like how did you guys go crazy and like get some crazy sponsorship out of this? Like, who knows? But everybody's able to go right back home because Janet is able to open up a portal at the last second, and that's pretty much the end of the movie. I thought that there were moments here where they could have made the hard decision, or they could have made the unpopular decision to say, hey, we're going to kill off a main character here, and we're going to show how serious this is going to get. However, I'm okay that they didn't, because I saw this movie, it's probably many are seeing this movie, as a true soft introduction into the Kang big bad arc. Right? I don't think we need to kill off people just yet for this. I think that it was fine to see him get defeated. It was a little bit questionable that he was able to be defeated by this team. However, I think what this is showing is that he's extremely powerful, Kang, as a character. Where his true power lies is in the volume of his variants. There are so many of them that they will start a war. At the end of the film, the end credits show an entire arena, Coliseum, full of Kangs, and there are 3 leader Kangs, or a few that are shown at the top, that acknowledge that the multiverse is being touched. So it's questionable. I think when we're going through this a little bit more, ultimately it was pretty good. I like this movie. I think that I would watch it again. I really enjoyed kind of what they did here. I thought that there was an opportunity for them to include some of the characters from the previous movies, considering this was an Ant-Man film. We didn't get Luis or anyone back in this film, although they could have done that maybe during the voiceover at the beginning of the film. So they kind of made an active choice not to do that. However, we did get like 5 seconds of Owen Wilson right at the back of the film, which did make me pretty happy, and that was during the scene with Loki. Oh, wow. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty good. I think if I have to rate this, I would give this film 7 out of 10. Maybe 6.5. Let's go with 6.5. 6.5 out of 10. And that's only because we got Owen Wilson at the end. I think there was a lot of opportunity for this film to be great, but it ultimately ended up just being pretty good. I don't think that this was a bad introduction into the new cinematic universe. I'm pretty excited to see where we go from here. I can't wait to see how we incorporate new heroes into this world as well, because Ant-Man looked pretty strong. So who else is going to be stronger? Who's going to have some pretty cool powers? In the comments down below, let me know. Who do you think is going to be super powerful here? If you've got some insight into what's going on with Secret Wars, because I haven't read the comic. Hey, give me an idea here. This is spoilers. Tell me who we should be looking out for, and please let me know your thoughts. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please check out the podcast. We have an extended spoiler talk review, and we'll be doing these on a weekly basis and for the big releases with Let's Talk Media. So thanks again.